Hi, welcome to Comic Talk. I'm Josh.
And I, Zenhauer.
That's a good one. I like it.
Thank you.
This is our Monday episode for this week. This will be a Talks Comics episode where we're going to talk about Vertigo comics.
In addition to Vertigo comics, we will also be talking about the sidekick. Every good hero has a sidekick.
What are we going to talk about with it?
The sidekick?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll just play it by ear. You
Okay.
know, let it come organically.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay.
So today we're going to talk about Vertigo comics. There was the recent announcement that they're doing some restructuring there. And so it seemed like a good opportunity for us just to air our feelings about the imprint in general, as well as about this specific piece of information we've gotten. So how well versed are you on the history of Vertigo? What do you know about it? What is your impression of the history? Because we're not historians, so
Yeah.
let's talk about our impression of the Vertigo history.
It was born out of the late 80s mature reader titles of DC, and they were doing so well and, you know, bringing in such a different demographic that they were like, well, fuck it, let's just make a whole imprint of this. And they did, and it was awesome.
Right, yeah. For me, Vertigo, what I think of first, or at least historically, is exactly that, where it's like DC characters, they belong still within the DC proper universe, but it's just like a way to separate it out and say, these are okay for adults but not kids. This is going to be a little heavier subject matter. It's more intense,
Right.
probably more wordy, less action-oriented. That's what I think of when I think of historical Vertigo, especially at the beginning. I think of things like, Sandman and
Animal Man.
And Swamp Thing and Hellblazer, right? These characters that are very much part of the DC proper universe, but just taken out of...
And at the time, there were kind of B characters, which is cool. I mean, it's... like, as comic readers, like, you eventually find out that the B characters are generally the ones that you want to read. And I could see that really being the turning point for that sort of outlook on things. Because they're like, well, we can't take Batman and do this shit because, you know, kids are going to want to read Batman. So let's take Animal Man because nobody gives a fuck about him. And then, we can do whatever we want.
Right. Plus, I think a lot of times the B characters actually have the more interesting stuff to mine in them just because they're a little more bizarre. They're a little bit off the beaten path in terms of characterization.
Sure.
They're not generally the everyman good guy paragon characters. That,
a lot of them don't even have a sidekick. So
right, yeah. And so they often, being on the periphery, you have a different view from these characters of the world and can explore it in new and different ways, which is part of the allure of the early Vertigo stuff, I think.
Definitely. As time goes on, they sort of faded from that, and Vertigo became their non-capes imprint. And we got some pretty solid stuff out of there. I mean, we beer must without mentioning Why the Last Man.
Right. And there's tons of stuff, though. There's Preacher and Fables and 100 Bullets. And there's just tons and tons of great material on Vertigo over the years that is not really DC proper stuff at all. It's just its own stuff. And they also slowly over time became more creator owned. They got into that whole thing, which is where most of that stuff comes from. They kind of were doing what Image does now before Image really did it.
Before it was cool.
Right. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that there were a lot of guys at DC in the 80s that were doing some really cool stuff and wanted a lot of space to work. And I think it was a recognition of that. Guys like Alan Moore and Grant Morrison and, there's a whole bunch of them. And also people like Denny O'Neil were doing things like this. But I don't think he ever actually did anything in Vertigo. Like, he ended up kind of fading out, I think, before the Vertigo thing got big. But
because he was huge in the mature reader stuff. I mean, he was doing Green Arrow and Question.
Right. right? He was kind of a big name, and he started a lot of that in those mid-tier characters. He liked to take those mid-tier characters and do stuff like that. So I just wanted to mention his name along with these others because I think it's appropriate.
Yeah.
You know, if we're going to talk about what birthed Vertigo, I think he had a big hand in that.
Yeah, huge hand.
Even if he never really did any Vertigo titles.
Mm-hmm. So flash forward beyond all that, it seems like they started maybe to fall from grace, I want to say around the time of the New 52. From then until now, I mean, honestly, I can't really think of a lot of memorable titles that they put out. I mean, yeah, they have, not Saga, but Fables. I mean, Fables is still coming out, but, I mean, I was looking the other day, and I think they have, like, 15 or so current titles, and I was familiar with maybe, like, 2 or 3 of them.
Right, and it's strange because it is an arm of DC, so they have the money to
and the resources
to really push this stuff and make it known, and so it seems odd that we have a lot of other smaller titles from other publishers that really have no more name recognition to them, but they still become bigger and more seen somehow. So I think it does make sense that there's some shakeup happening.
Right.
There sort of had to be, right? Because as bad as DC is doing, Vertigo is doing even worse.
Yeah. And really from a writer's perspective, like I don't blame guys like Jason Aaron for not wanting to put out, let's say, Southern Bastards on Vertigo rather than Image because, I mean, while Vertigo like started with the whole creator-owned thing, like, I mean, Image has certainly taken it to a next level. So if you're going to do like a creator-owned book and you have the name recognition, like, why wouldn't you go to Image?
Right. Well, and Vertigo's structure is also different. They have, it's somewhere in between, like a traditional structure and what Image does. Image just says, do whatever you want. Hire an editor if you want. Don't hire an editor. Have a separate penciler if you want. Don't have a separate. It's completely yours to do what you want. You pick the paper, right? Like it's all up. You sell the ads even, really. But with Vertigo, they still have like page rates, right? You get your penciler, and there's specific page rates that you still have to pay them. Like you get to keep the property, but they still have a lot of editorial control. They keep their fingers in it. So maybe you would think that maybe they'd see what Image is doing and try to go more that route. But now let's move on to like this restructuring because it sounds like they're not.
Yeah, it's hard to say because I know that Lee and Didio were placed in like emergency control. I hope that's not a long-term thing. If it is, it's just completely gonna ruin whatever's left of Vertigo. Like it's not gonna be salvageable 6 months under these dudes. Like I guarantee it.
Right.
But who knows, man? They just got what's that guy to do the young animal?
Gerard Way.
Yeah, that was a pretty bold step.
Right.
So if it's something else along those lines, like I am intrigued. But yeah, again, with Lee and Didio in charge, like what the fuck are they gonna do?
Right. Right. Yeah, it's a strange move to put those guys in charge of something so different from their wheelhouse, right?
Right.
But yeah, I think Young Animal, we should bring that into the conversation because I feel like this idea with Young Animal is to now rekindle what they did with early Vertigo, right? Young Animal, this is the push from Vertigo of the late 80s, early 90s. It's the same idea again. Let's take these DC characters, lesser known C and B characters, and put them over here and let them have more creative freedom and do more mature things with them.
Right. This is so bizarre. I mean, why wouldn't they just do that with Vertigo? I think I brought that up before. Like, what? It's like creating more solutions to a problem than there are causes to the problem.
Right.
It's absurd.
It is absurd. It makes a certain amount of sense, I suppose, in that it makes it easier to clarify between the two. If you see Vertigo on a title, you're going to know that it's a creator-owned title that is not part of the DC universe. And if you see Young Animal, you're going to know that it's the opposite is the case, that it's owned by DC, it's part of the DC universe, but it's for mature readers.
Back in the day, I mean, they had both. They had characters that the writers made up, and then they had like the DC property, like Swamp Thing and stuff, and I mean, it wasn't like a big deal, people weren't confused about it. Like, who is this guy, and who is this Yorick man that's suddenly part of the DC universe?
Right.
It's like, no, nobody ever fucking thought that.
Mm-hmm. However, at the same time, at that time, the readership was a lot more insular. People were more aware, I think, of what it was that they were reading and why, in a lot of ways, in that, or at least the goal was to market to people who were more informed, whereas now this big push is to widen the market back out and reach this new audience of people, right? Like, the people who are reading comics in the late 80s and early 90s, these are different people than who they're trying to get now. Right now they want the new 20-year-old market. Mm-hmm. So in that way, it makes sense that if you're trying to pull in a brand new market and not just tinker with who's reading what within the market, right? Which is what they did before. They were saying, well, instead of reading these, read these. They're more appropriate, and you'll be a bigger fan of what we're doing. Now it's more like, look, people who have an inkling of an idea what comics are but aren't super into them, we have stuff for you that we think you will like.
Yeah, but it's weird putting like DC property at the forefront of that, in my opinion, because people that don't read comics, like, their argument is like, no, I don't want to read about people like punching each other. Like, it's fucking stupid and childish and whatever. So making Young Animal like your more adult out of like the 3 properties, and then using DC property within that just seems like absurd. Like, why wouldn't you push like the creator-owned ones and say like, hey, look at this isn't like your standard ass Superman comic, this is something else. Right.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think a lot of this stems from the entertainment industry in the non-comic form, television and film, where the superhero genre is actually really popular right now. And there's still this perception out there that film and television is the more adult, mature, and nuanced version of these things, right? People go and they watch Iron Man 3 and they think that it's the grown-up version of the comics, which we've discussed before how usually it's the other way around. There's a lot of comic properties that are much more nuanced and mature than the films that are marketed mostly to like teenagers, 15-year-olds, right?
Yeah, 15 is about right.
Yeah, so, but the perception from the public is the other way around. And so maybe this is an attempt to say, here are more adult superhero things from DC that you can read if you like these things that you think are supposedly more mature, right? Like, this is not Superman and Wonder Woman, but it is
superhero genre.
It is Netflix's Daredevil of comic books, right? I think there's something to that, this back and forth where they're trying to harness the popularity in other mediums in a new, fresh way, which is why they're also bringing in Gerard Way,
right? Who's
an interesting mixture of, he used to be like a pop icon to people who are now our age, right? But he also has this history of working with Vertigo in the past.
Yeah,
so,
Grant Morrison.
He worked under Grant Morrison as an intern when Morrison was doing like the Invisibles and stuff. So he has this knowledge of the industry, but he's also this pop guy that people can go, oh, I know who that is, right? Maybe I should read the stuff that he's in charge of now.
Sure. I guess I'm just left kind of wondering like where Vertigo is going to fit into all that.
Right.
Right. It's just like they're taking everything that made Vertigo. Like you're putting out something that's more adult, so that's like taking away Vertigo's readership, and then you're taking away like a lot of those B characters that would have been fucking awesome in Vertigo and putting them on something else. So what's Vertigo gonna be?
It's odd.
Other than like shitty Image, which is basically what it is.
Yeah, it's mostly shitty Image, I think, and I also think part of what they're doing with Vertigo is going to be Image for people who have exclusive deals with DC Comics. Right, so Tom King, he can't work with Image because he's going to be doing this exclusive deal with DC, but he's still got things like Sheriff of Babylon that he wants to do. So, okay, do it on Vertigo. You can't work with Image, but you can work with Vertigo because that's still within the DC Comics wheelhouse.
But how many of those writers are there?
There's more than you might think. You know, Brian Azzarello is another good example.
Okay, but ones that like we want to read. Maybe I should have been more specific.
Yeah, probably not that many, but
yeah,
I have to imagine that's the idea here.
Yeah, it's a fine idea, but I mean, unless you have the talent to back it up, like what the fuck are you gonna do? Like,
Right. So, all in all, are we saying really that it's a little too convoluted and unnecessarily separated out, you think?
Yeah, it's like real life Flashpoint. Like they're doing the Flashpoint of business, and it's just fucking stupid. Like there's all this stuff that you're gonna have to follow just to know like what the fuck that you're reading, like what company you're reading from, and then once you get into that, it's gonna be another whole fucking convoluted mess because, again, Didio and Lee don't know how to edit a goddamn thing.
Right. Do you think in a way maybe the obvious solution to this would be to simply get rid of the imprints and just have DC Comics? And
yeah, I would love that.
Have 100 Bullets and Fables and all that's just DC Comics. And
that'd be fucking great.
It would add a lot of legitimacy to what DC Comics does, right? And it would naturally get you more push and pull from your readers. You know, someone who would read 100 Bullets, for example, would go, oh, this was really cool. What else does DC have? Right? And then they might pick up Spider-Man. they might pick up like Superman or Detective Comics or something to see what's going on with those and see how they stack up a little more.
Yeah, definitely. Not to mention, like, I mean, the indie comics are pretty much like a hipster thing. I think we can pretty safely say that in some form or another. Like, even if you're not taking your record player to Starbucks, like you think things are cool that other people don't, so just deal with it. But getting those people right now are like, oh, I don't read anything on DC, that's trash. Like, I read Vertigo, I read Image. Like, if you got those people talking about DC the way that they talked about Image, like, that would only do favors for everything involved.
Right. And by bringing up the status of DC proper, you can also then have a little more pull to get better people in to write Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman. Not that they haven't done an okay job of that here with this new Rebirth thing. They have a few interesting people coming in. So it's not like they're not trying, but it would be a whole hell of a lot easier, I think, if DC Comics didn't have its name, run through the mud so much just from having so many bad comics. I mean, frankly, by moving all these interesting things with good promotion behind them, right? With a good word of mouth, if it's a DC Comics book, then DC Comics is then cooler.
Right, yeah. And I mean, that was always the appeal of DC back in the day, is that it was the more, like, between Marvel and DC, like, DC was the more adult one.
Right, back in the day. 80s, right? When all the great stuff.
As an adult, like, what from DC can you read and feel like secure in your adulthood?
Yeah, nothing really. It's all very.
I mean, Prez is on the break. Omega Men, you could maybe make a case for, but beyond that, beyond the titles that are getting like cut and segmented out and canceled and all that shit. That's the thing. I feel really bad for the writers that are trying to do creative things at DC, because like, the staff has just run it so far into the ground. Like, people don't think to look there for cool shit anymore.
Right.
I mean, people will go to Marvel and read some of their stuff just because they have interesting talent coming through. Like, Jason Aaron has been like a standard there for a long time. Tom King even, is doing the Vision. He's doing an excellent fucking job. But like, in DC, what are you gonna do? Like, unless you're a Scott Snyder fan, which I hope you're not. He's okay.
Yeah. It just overall, they put so much time and effort into complicating DC Comics. It seems so strange and such a backwards way of doing things. And it feels like this Vertigo move is just that.
Another manifestation of that.
It's just DC Comics higher-ups fucking with things to make them worse taking more creative control when that's exactly the problem in the first place is too much control from the higher people in the organization,
and splitting demographics, in places that they don't necessarily exist. When we talked about like the 17 fucking Batman titles that are out at a time, like you can justify 3 at the most, and that's like pushing it,
right?
Yeah. And now they have DC, and then under that is Vertigo, and then Young Animal fits somewhere in there. So I don't.
Yeah. So I guess Vertigo now will just be, like we said, it's just going to be Image for people with DC contracts. I don't know what else anyone should expect to see from it. I think that's the best case scenario for Vertigo at this point. Worst case scenario is that it just disappears. I can see Vertigo, if Young Animal does even okay, I can see Vertigo pretty much disappearing within the next few years. It almost disappeared a few years ago when really Fables was about the only thing they had going, right? So I can see them just cutting their loss on Vertigo and using it, if anything, as just reprinting old Vertigo stuff, right? So when they need more copies of V for Vendetta, they put out a new hardcover omnibus and charge $175 for it, and there you go, Vertigo. Recolor something every couple years and $100.
Stick it out there.
Yeah, for that one. So we'll just have to wait and see, but historically, we both love Vertigo.
Yeah.
Right? I think there's a lot of great stuff on there. And so don't take like our negativity towards what's going on now as like a don't read Vertigo, because it's got some of the best stuff ever in comics.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of the most amazing comic stories out there.
And same with DC. Like, going back to late 80s, early 90s, like that is easily my favorite era and publishing era of any publisher of comics.
Yeah, and especially in the superhero genre, if you want to call superhero genre, which I think is a subject for another day that we can get into, because I don't think a lot of that stuff was the superhero genre. I think it was about superheroes, but it was not the superhero genre.
Yeah, sidekick or not,
Right, which is something we're now seeing that I think Vertigo had a big impact and we lost for a while, and we're seeing come back in a pretty major way in a lot of comics, where superhero is again now just a setting, right, or a character archetype, but the stories themselves are not superhero genre stories. Like The Vision is a great example where it's really a sci-fi story. It's straight out of like Philip K. Dick or something, right?
Sure.
Omega Man is Kyle Rayner, is Green Lantern superhero, but these are both Tom King examples. But it's by no means a superhero story. It's a story about, it's another sci-fi story about terrorism. So, and I think Vertigo really was the catalyst for that, especially as we had the Question in Animal Man and Swamp Thing and Sandman.
And it was awesome.
Yeah, it was very cool. And it made that whole shared universe of characters interesting in a way that it bothers me sometimes that we don't have anything too similar to that. It seems like Valiant is kind of trying to do that, but I know some of our viewers really like what's going on at Valiant. I'm just north of lukewarm on it, really.
Yeah. It seems like they're like on the cusp of doing exactly what I want them to do, but they never quite. With the exception of maybe the Bloodshot Annual, like that one really blew me away. But,
right. Yeah.
Yeah. Case in point, like it's getting to that like mature readers DC kind of stuff, but it seems like they're almost like afraid to kind of take that last step. But that's neither here nor there.
Right. But Vertigo did it. Full on, 25 years ago. So here's hoping for the best, I guess, with Vertigo. And also with Young Animal. I know this is about Vertigo, but I feel like this is really...
You can't not talk about it.
Vertigo and Young Animal. Like, Young Animal is just Vertigo. You can give it a new name, but it's still Vertigo in my mind. So let's hope for the best on it, I guess. And at this point, how about you guys just tell us what you think of the whole thing? You know, do you think it makes sense to separate out Young Animal and Vertigo? Is it pointless, or what do you think are like the pluses here, and why do you think they did it? I would love like fan theory on why they decided to break it up in this way.
Yeah.
Right. So let's see what you guys have on that. It could be interesting to read. Aside from that, I think that's going to do it for us.
Mm-hmm.
So
like, subscribe, get yourself a sidekick.
Do all that, and we'll be back next Monday, and we're always here on Thursdays with Pull List Review. So check it out, and goodbye again.